the NHL will see an expansion to 32 active teams with the addition of the Seattle Kraken. You'll be able to watch a new team start completely from scratch. So how do expansions in the NHL work? How does a team just form out of nowhere? Where do they get the players? In this video, we'll answer all of these questions and more. We are Benchworm, and this is NHL Expansion 101, the Seattle Kraken Expansion Explained. Welcome to Benchworm. We make videos that help people understand sports because we believe enjoying sports brings communities together. Before we get into the mechanics of how the Seattle Kraken expansion draft will work, let's add some context. So first things first, how did this all happen? Well, on December 4th, 2018, the NHL Board of Governors voted unanimously to approve Seattle's bid for an expansion team. Okay, fast forward to today, and the Seattle Kraken are about to form their team via the expansion draft. How does this work? Well, essentially, the Seattle Kraken team will be made up of players from all of the other teams in the NHL. They get to pick one player from every team, except the Vegas Golden Knights, who are exempt, to draft onto their roster. That's 30 teams, meaning they get to pick 30 players. Yup, each NHL team will be losing one of their players in the expansion draft. You might be wondering, how is this fair? Well, first off, the NHL Board of Governors, who as we mentioned, voted for this to happen, is made up of one representative from each NHL team, that rep usually being the owner. So they voted for this to happen. Why? Well, the growth of the league is a good thing, but also they get paid. The Seattle Kraken's franchise fee was $650 million. That $650 million is split amongst the 30 teams that the Seattle Kraken will be drafting from. The second reason this is pretty fair is that there are a number of rules that narrow down the players that they will be able to pick. It's not a free-for-all, they can't just pick a superstar from each team. That said, it's balanced enough that there should be a decent number of players to build a team with. So let's take a look at the rules. We can look at them in 4 sections: Seattle draft requirements, team protection options, player eligibility, and team exposure requirements. So what are the Seattle Kraken's draft requirements? The most basic requirement, as we mentioned earlier, is that the Seattle Kraken have to draft 30 players, one from each team. Of the 30 players, they must include at least 14 forwards, 9 defensemen, and 3 goalies. The 4 remaining spots can be any position. A minimum of 20 of those players must be under contract for the 2021-2022 regular season, and lastly, Seattle must reach between 60 to 100% of the salary cap of the previous season, which means between $48.9 and $81.5 million. Okay, so we know what Seattle has to do. Let's see what the rest of the teams can do to save themselves from losing one of their best players during the expansion. Teams are allowed to protect a limited number of their players from being selected during the draft. A few days before the draft happens, the team has to submit their protected list. This is a list of players that Seattle may not select. Teams have 2 protection schemes to choose from. One, they can protect 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and a goalie, or they can protect 8 skaters and 1 goalie. Most teams will go with the first scenario as they get to protect more skaters overall, 10 instead of 8. But teams who want to protect more than 3 defensemen, or possibly but not likely 8 forwards, would have to go with option 2. Small note here, if a player has a no movement clause in their contract, they must take up a spot on the protected list. The only way a team can avoid having to do this is if the player agrees to waive this clause. Protected lists are made public before the expansion draft. You can actually check out the protected lists over at NHL.com right now. We'll leave a link in the description. Protecting players isn't the only thing that teams have going for them. There are also types of players that are automatically not eligible to be selected by Seattle. 1. All first and second year professionals, and 2. All unsigned draft choices. So basically, rookies and prospects are safe. To tip the scales back a bit, there are team exposure requirements. Each team must make sure that they are exposing at the minimum 1 defenseman who is on contract for the 2021-22 season and has played in at least 40 games in the previous season or 70 games in the previous 2 seasons. 2 forwards with the same requirements as above, and 1 goalie who is on contract for the 2021-22 season or will be an RFA. Lastly, players with potential career-ending injuries who have missed the last 60 games or who have confirmed career-threatening injuries may not be used to satisfy the above exposure requirements. Okay, so that's a lot to take in, but the gist of it is: 1. Seattle gets to take 1 player from every team. 2. Teams get to protect up to 11 players. 3. Rookies and prospects are safe. And 4. Teams must expose serviceable signed players at each position. So once the draft is done, is that the final team that will be playing when the season starts? The answer is probably not. There is more fun to be had. Before the season starts, Seattle will be adding more players to their team via the NHL entry draft, and they'll also likely make some trades and sign more players. Well, that's it for this video. We hope it helps you understand how an NHL team could form from nothing. Please like and subscribe for more sports explainer videos, and for more Benchworm, check out this Hockey 101 video or this video explaining offsides and icing.